Hello and welcome to this instructional video on displacement geometry. Displacement geometry can be applied only to one rectangular face of a brush. Let's create a brush with, say, grass texture. Now go to the toggle texture application tool, the cube with different coloured faces. Select the face you want to apply displacement geometry to, go to the Displacement tab and click Create. The power level refers to how detailed the displacement geometry will be. Your options are 2, 3 or 4. The higher the power, the more detailed and more realistic looking, but also the more resources it will require. I will create a power 4 displacement. You will have noticed that the rest of the brush has disappeared, leaving only the top face, to which the displacement geometry has been applied. If you use displacement geometry for floor or walls of your map to the outside void, it will not prevent leaking, so you need to add a proper brush behind it to ensure there is no leaking. One quick and easy way of adding a realistic touch to the displacement geometry is to use the noise tool. Click it, add a maximum and minimum height above the level of the geometry. I'll use min -8 and max +8 and click OK. You'll notice that the geometry now has random bumps in it, although these may be hard to see in the video. To directly control the shape of the displacement geometry, select the Paint Geometry tool. Normally you will only be using the raise/lower effect. To control what change in height you achieve, use the distance slider. And to control the area you affect, use the spatial radius slider. You'll notice when you pass the cursor over the displacement geometry in the 3D view that you get a sort of green wireframe sphere. If you click the left mouse button, you will raise the geometry. If you hold it down, you'll raise it very quickly. This is not really advisable, as you don't get so much control. And if you right click, you lower the geometry. The other effect you may use is the smooth effect. Here only the left mouse button has an effect. Here you will want to hold down the left mouse button when applying it. The effect of smooth is to, as the name implies, smooth out the displacement geometry. Another very useful tool of displacement geometry is the Paint Alpha tool. Here you will probably only want to use the raise/lower effect. Painting Alpha allows you to smoothly and realistically blend two textures over a single face of displacement geometry. For this to work, you will need to have a blend texture applied to the displacement geometry. You can find these simply by filtering for the word blend in the texture browser. Here, selecting the brush size will change the area you affect, and the value slider affects the degree to which you will affect any part of the displacement geometry. Left click applies the alternate texture to the one you started with. Here I'm applying a patch of mud to this grass. Right click applies the original texture again. The Invert Alpha tool complements the Paint Alpha tool by allowing you to simply invert which areas of the displacement geometry have which part of the blend texture applied to them. As you can see, we've replaced the grass with mud and the mud with grass. If you ever wish to remove the displacement geometry from the face, you can click Destroy. This will also return the brush to its original shape. The final tool you need to know about is the Sew tool. If you have two pieces of displacement geometry placed side by side, you have them both selected and you press Sew, and how I will attempt to sew the two pieces together seamlessly along the edge they touch. Sewing only works well when the size of the triangles which make up the displacement geometry of both are of the same size. Otherwise, sewing is difficult. Obviously, depending on the texture and orientation and size of the displacement geometry you use, you don't just need to create grassy ground. You create cliffs, rock formations, or, say, more realistic looking roads and streets.